What's up, everybody? This is Kyle at the Lazy Rockin' T Ranch, and today we're in the shop underneath the 2015 900S RZR. This has been an ongoing project of ours, and what we're going to be doing is, the ultimate goal is to build the best all-around machine that can fit through tight trails and still be fun at speed, drifting around, still having that side-by-side fun nature to it. Now, in this effort, what we've done is upgraded our tire sizes. So we got these big, meaty 32-inch Rockzillas from Maxxis. They are rather heavy. So with the 900s, we do have some weak points on the tabs where the control arms mount that could potentially be under some additional stress now that we've got some more weight here. So if you have a 900S, probably what you're coming across is there seems to be a diminishment in the aftermarket options. But fret not, 2015 to about 2017, I think there was some changes in 2018. Please correct me on some of that if there's maybe some fluctuations in models, I'm sure. But the 900S, 1000S, and 1000 XPs, the front chassis towards the middle, except when you get to the rear where they switch to the trailing arms, excuse me, not the control arms, they are relatively similar. So control arms here, this is left side, or passenger side. We're going to clean all this up. I finally did some negotiating with some PB Blaster and every Allen socket I have, and finally we're able to negotiate the front section of my skid plate. Now, this is a full body skid plate from Tusk. Very, very strong, very slick. It's been coming in handy at URI, rock crawling, getting high center, but still being able to slide over some rocks and obstacles. And it's very, very smooth. I did have to, you can kind of see, I drilled some additional drain holes. You can kind of see how it goes all the way back towards the tail end of the machine. Very, very nice. I do recommend it. I'll try to find the link. I've had it up here for a while, but I'll try to find the link and post it in the video. Do recommend, but this is where we're going to be bracing. It's where the control arms meet the front part of the chassis here. Fairly thin metal. So with the extra weight of these tires and rotational mass being increased, I don't want to run into problems and start having to weld on my frame. So this is our solution. Back you out. This is a frame gusset. Super ATV makes one, but actually this one is from Rough Country. However, this is actually advertised for a 1000 XP. But to prove my point from earlier, you can see we should have no problems lining up. Front chassis and everything seems to be the same dimensions. I'm going to get this all cleaned up. We're going to get the bolts out of the control arms, get this thing in the air on the front end, and we're going to see for sure if it'll slide in there and fit, and this should strengthen up these tabs. All right, now that we got that front section of that skid plate off, I did want to flush out my front differential fluid. Full disclosure, I'm on borrowed time on this front differential, and I've known this for quite some time. I've inspected it in the past. We did get this RZR second or maybe even third hand, and I know that I have missing teeth off the ring gear. We do get some shavings in the oil or the front differential fluid. And to show you, get the camera to focus real quick. Now, this is the drain plug. It is magnetized, and I have wiped this thing probably 100 times already. That is not mud. That is metal shavings that have basically, for lack of a better word, like coagulated with the differential fluid. This can cause some randomized full drive engagement, things like that, because the front Hilliard style clutch differential on these RZRs, they operate off of like a magnetized clutch. Some witchcraft and wizardry happens, and your all-wheel drive engages and disengages. But having those metal shavings floating in there can obviously complicate that action. So basically at this point, what we're going to do is flush it, top it off with some fluid, and we're going to send her on down the road. It's lasted this long. If I hear a bang, we have a good idea what probably happened. Okay, everybody, I know this is pretty easy to find information, but while I was in here doing this, I figured I would just kind of touch on it. This is the front differential, obviously. This is the actual fill hole here. When you're filling the fluid, you want it bottom of the threads. Now, I do suggest using the Polaris demand drive fluid. These front differentials can be a little finicky on the fluid that they like to take. I do recommend using that. I think Amsoil does have an equivalent, but your standard like gear case fluid, things like that, typically do not agree with it. You'll get some weird engagement issues. Now, your drain plug is here. Got a nice little cutout in the frame for it. It goes right in here. Now, when you go to fill these things back up, do yourself a favor. All right, focus. There we go. Anti-seize. Use anti-seize on these bolts. Your fill bolt and the drain bolt and the check bolt or fill bolt. I had to use an impact to get this sucker out of here. And if you can't tell, on the front diff, you probably saw some chew marks. Well, here are the matching ones on my check bolt or fill bolt. Either term is correct. I had to use a chisel to get this sucker out here, and you can tell that the Allen key is also wallered out. So do yourself a favor, use anti-seize when you put these suckers back up there, and you won't have to do what I had to do. Okay, so when topping the front diff fluid back off, so you got a little bit of a weird angle here, and this is your fill hole, and you fill it up to the bottom of the threads like I said earlier. It can be kind of hard to get to. There is a little pump tool you can get from AutoZone, Advance, several auto parts stores. But what I have found actually to work the easiest is you take a bottle of diff fluid, transfer case fluid, whatever the case is. One of the little, it's got a little needle-like kind of spout on it that you can cut to size. I cut it fairly small, but you know, you still want enough flow for the fluid to go in. And I just attach a little piece of hose with a little hose clamp. And all you do is just slip her on in there and give her a squeeze, and it just flows on in, and you just top her off that way. Works pretty good. Nice little tight places, and obviously you can change the length of hose and get into some pretty precarious spots. So little helpful tip. We are now back underneath the razor. I got the front diff fluid flushed and topped off. So what I've done is I got the razor on a jack, and I have lifted it just enough to where I still have the front tires on, because I want to keep these control arms at the correct angle here. And what I've done is just lift the razor just enough to where I can slide the factory bolts freely in and out, and that still maintains where it's supposed to be. It may take some finagling to get some of them out, a little tapping, things like that. Okay, all the factory bolts are pulled out, and let's see, hopefully, fingers crossed. Oops. Get my hands in here. Look at that. Seems to fit pretty smoothly. Okay, so we got the gusset in here. Everything looks like it lines up really well, like I was saying earlier. However, we got the front bolts in here very easily. Now, when we go to the back, now the factory Polaris skid plate is very thin plastic. I'm not 100% if it actually comes out in sections. I need some new gloves. But anywho's, this Tusk aftermarket skid plate, obviously my little corners here are causing some alignment problems. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pull the gusset off. I'm going to take a little grinder. I'm just going to kind of grind this down just so I can slide this in. All right, now that we got our little corners trimmed up here, I'll show you. All I did was took my Dremel with a little cut wheel, and I just cut these little corners out, and our frame gusset slipped right on in like butter. I just bolted it in again. Like I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to weld it in probably one day once I do the control arms. I'm going to do offset control arms, pull it forward, give it a little bit of a stretch so I get a little bit more clearance here. But for now, I'm just going to bolt it in like it's designed for. Looks really nice. Everything's all bolted in nice and tight. Fits up nice and flush with our bumper plate here, which was unexpected, but I do like it. So this will now replace our front skid plate section, which we can see tossed away over there. So this is going to take that place. This is still pretty strong right here. This is factory, but this will just kind of add a little strength on these control arm brackets here to the frame. Make sure they don't warp or bend or anything like that with these extra heavy tires. All right, so we're on to the next. Yeah. So along with the frame gusset to help manage the extra weight of these big beefy tires, I did limit straps on the shocks as well. These help keep the shock from banging out full extension. If you're like rock crawling, coming off of a ledge or something, you got a lot of weight of these tires. When that shock completely fully extends, if you got a lot of weight, you can bend your rods, cause some damage, some internal valving issues can possibly occur, things like that. But it's just a preventative caution. There's a way to measure them out. There's some really good resources online. Typically speaking, you measure out full droop. So basically means is I jacked the RZR up all the way in the rear, and I had to do different ones for rear and front because obviously the shocks are different lengths. So you measure out what would be full extension on the shock with the weight and everything on it, and then you find your point where you would want it to basically be like your max out. And there's a little formula. You're going to get about 2 inches of stretch per 12 inches of strap. There's like a little formula. Again, this is pretty readily available online. Just look up, there's a couple of YouTube videos. Just look up like limit straps, like how to measure for limit straps. There's a bunch of stuff that'll come up there. It's pretty easy to find. On this setup, I did a steel spacer, longer bolt, grade 8 bolt. I always try to use grade 8 hardware, obviously. And there's one at the top, and there is another one down here at the bottom. I got my brake line running over it, so that way it don't bind up, but that's the bottom shock bolt. And I have these front and rear, so again, that just kind of helps keep the shock from going really hard with the weight of the tires and possibly causing damage. This is all in prep work just to kind of handle these tires. I'd already posted a video on performance upgrades. I did do a BMP tune, Dynajet Power Vision. That worked out really nicely. If you haven't seen that video, go look at it. I appreciate you checking them out. But I'm probably going to do some tuning on the clutch. I did go out to the Jeep Affair, kind of smelled a little bit of belt. There was a bunch of vehicles out there, so it's really hard to determine if that was actually me or not. It could have been something else. A lot of mud was out there. It was a slick day, so could have been somebody's fan belt or something too. I don't know, but it kind of, I've been messing with this thing enough to know, like, I kind of know what belt smells like hot burnt belt. Didn't smoke or anything, so hopefully the belt's fine, but I'm probably gonna have to do some tuning on the clutch, which I was aware of that anyways. I may play around some of the weights, and I'll definitely do a video on that too. The other thing that I have done, because the tires are so large, I really need to be using arched forward and rear offset control arms, and I'm going to do that, and that will give me an overall stretch of about 3.5 inches, which I want to kind of stretch that wheelbase out anyways on this thing. But I did have to notch out my inner fenders right here. I pulled them back from the factory. There's about a 2-inch gap here between this and the door. I was able to pull it back with some zip ties. Look, half this thing's held together with zip ties. This thing is not a trailer queen or a pavement princess. I beat up on it. I want it to look cool. I want it to function, but I also ain't that worried about it. If it gets banged up on the trail, so be it. I mean, that's what it's for. That's what I want it for. Okay, did want to recap, because obviously you can't fit 32s from the factory. No duh. So in addition to notching out my fenders like I showed earlier, I do have aftermarket wheels. The factory are staggered. So I have 14-inch Rock Tricks. They're 7-inch wide, but they're 4+3 spacing. So that does kind of end up being about 1 inch wider front and rear. Pretty close. But these have been really great. I actually came across them on Amazon, and they're a pretty good price, and they take a beating. I like them. I've run on several four-wheelers. My old 800 RZR had them. Obviously, I'm running on this RZR. So shout out to Rock Tricks. Y'all make really cool wheels for a very good price, so I recommend. May or may not have noticed I also have a bracket lift when I was showing the limit straps. Okay, so this bracket is not factory. It bolts in down there, so this is just a bolt-in, just bracket lift like a lot of ATVs and side-by-sides, other things like that have as an option. That was the rear. The front bolts in. You can see, lay my light down. This cross member is part of the bracket lift, and you can see where the head of the shock bolts in, that bracket comes down. So it's like that on each side. They say it's, I think it's advertised like 3 to 5 inch lift, I think, when you come across them most places online. That's only because you can adjust the ride height on the shocks. It's pretty common knowledge on these if you mess with side-by-sides or even some of your newer four-wheelers and stuff like that have them too, some Can-Ams, players. But these are threaded, and you can adjust them with these, I forget what they're called, but there is a name for these types of nuts. You use like a spanner wrench. It's basically got like kind of like a hook that hooks in these little grooves. I typically end up having to take like a little flat chisel and tapping the locking one loose and then adjusting. You do lift the machine up, get the weight off of it, and they're fairly easy to adjust. I'm maybe running just a touch over factory ride height. Most of my lift is coming from the 32-inch tires and the bracket lift itself. I'm not running much higher on the adjustment on the ride height on the shocks than factory. Maybe just a touch. I haven't like gone back and really measured. All right, so lift kit, aftermarket space wheels, and we had to trim our fenders and do some kind of maneuvering to get some clearance when turning. Pretty easy to clear 32, so there's not a whole lot that has to be done. However, I do recommend doing the supporting stuff. At the minimum, do a clutch kit. The factory clutches on these are not really good for much over the factory. You can probably get away with like a 28 or something. They come from the factory with 27s, a staggered setup, wider in the rear than the front. I had some ITP 28-inch Blackwater tires, also a staggered setup, on these 14-inch Rock Trick wheels. That did okay. I did do a clutch kit. I do a Super ATV Rev 1, which is just a generic, just kind of general upgrade clutch kit. Just helps with engagement and stuff like that. It can help compensate for extra weight of tires. I don't think that was necessary for the 28-inch tire Blackwaters, but definitely for these 32s. But I also have the BMP tuner, which I've already gone over. Those two things definitely minimum I would recommend. Now I am going to have to play with my clutching like I was saying earlier. So we'll kind of fiddle around with that. As another preventative maintenance, I do have the Super ATV heavy duty rack and pinion and tie rods. The tie rods, I'll show you. Heim joints, a lot stronger. Focus. There we go. So, and then it goes to the bolt-in rack and pinion. It replaces the factory. They're a bit of a pain to install. There we go. So it's a bit of a pain to install. Not terrible, but maneuvering, and then obviously you got to adjust your tie rods for your toe. But minimum recommend at least the tune and the clutch. The other stuff's just kind of up to your discretion, but I do recommend it just so you don't run into any issues and you can kind of compensate. Oh yeah, just wanted to kind of go over and let you guys know what I've done to just kind of get to where I could use these 32s on what I got. The other thing that I am doing to try to compensate for this weight, because these tires are heavy, boys. Trail brakes. I've never heard of this company. I actually came across it on Amazon, but these are ceramics. One of the main things I did, the very first thing I noticed when I put these big tires up here is, oh boy, does my braking take a toll. A lot of rotation, extra rotational mass there, so this to be expected. So the ceramic should hopefully help me stop a little bit better, slow it down some. It's not going to be but so great just because there's this pad. There is a big brake kit for these. I will probably end up upgrading, but oh, it looks pretty nice actually. Nice little ceramic pads. So we're gonna give them a shot. So a little shout out to Trailed. Haven't run them before. I've run like Kevlar centered pads. I know a lot of mud guys, they'll run brass pads because they do last a long time, but the brass does not stop very well. I want to stop. I like to do high speed, kind of riding at times. I like to slide it around, drift it around, play around like that. I typically trail ride and kind of rock crawl-ish type of stuff. But I do like to get on it, and I want to be able to stop too. Like one of the best things about these things is like the best go-kart in the world. So you want to be able to scoot around and have some fun, but I don't want to run into nobody. Cool little sticker. Sticker. You know we love stickers. So we'll see how these work out. I'll do a little video. I'll install them. Also need to swap out some wheel bearings, so I'll probably just do them all at the same time. I'll post a little video on that. So hopefully the ceramic brakes will help us. I am going to do possibly do a upgraded big brake kit in the future in the front. Leave the rears alone. One thing I did want to also kind of touch on this thing. I am not a professional. I barely know what I'm doing half the time, and the other half I'm just kind of winging it. So y'all just kind of get to tag along and just kind of see me fumble my way through this thing. And when I mean fumble, that's exactly what I'm doing. But I appreciate y'all coming along for the ride. Now I do understand if you are in the side-by-side world at all and you're watching these videos or continue to watch my videos, and I hope you do, you're probably wondering, why in the world am I doing this for a 900S RZR? It's a lot of work for something I could really go get a different unit like a 1000S or a 1000 XP, get a horsepower boost. The 1000 XPs have a longer wheelbase, but here's my thing. I bought this unit pretty cheap. I got about $7,200 a few years ago. That was pretty unheard of. I drove almost to Virginia. I'm in eastern North Carolina. It's like a 4-hour drive to go pick this thing up. And I got it at a really good price. Now, I needed some work, and I did put the work into it, but it's been very reliable. Now, yes, I know there's no replacement for displacement. I get it. I'm a motor guy. I love cars, motorcycles, you name it. I love it just as much as the next guy. But I also am trying to be kind of budget friendly here. This is going to be a budget build. I still want something I can kind of whiz around tight little trails and stuff. So that is why I'm doing this to the 900. I think it's going to work out pretty good. Plus, I am going to do, in the future, I do want to do another build. Possibly a turbo or something along those lines, and I'm thinking about doing a 4-seater. So if I was going to do something kind of long, 4-seaters are already long. I don't really want something in the middle, which would be like an XP. So I'd rather have something kind of short, nimble, fun around the trails, beat up on, and then I can get like a newer 4-seater, possibly a turbo, something like that, and do a different build later. So just for me, for what I'm looking to do, and just for my budget, and plus just again, because the unit's been so good to me, I just want to see where I can take the build. I did want to recap that with y'all just so you kind of understand where my head's at with the build and kind of what my expectations are and kind of why I'm doing it. Because again, I know there's some beefier, better units that I could be building instead of little old 900. But I mean, this is what I got, and it's worked out pretty good so far. So we're just going to kind of see where it goes from here. But I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. Hope you all continue to tune in, and I will see you guys next time.